Hey, tech writers, Dr. Whiteside here. Hope you're having a great day or evening, whatever it happens to be. I want to take a few minutes and talk to you a bit about what is technical communication. This comes from our chapter 1 reading, and I'm going to add in my own thoughts as well. I'm going to start by sharing my screen with you. Let's see how that goes. Okay, there we go. And first, always a great place to start. I am huge on definitions. I'm sure that most of you like to begin with a definition before you move forward as well. And technical communication is, I love this definition. It's one of my favorite definitions out there. Technical communication is a process of managing technical information. It doesn't even have to be technical information, any information in ways that allows people to take action. It is highly mobile, interactive, and adaptable. That's a lot packed into one. It's audience or reader centered. It's team oriented. It's highly visual. It's shaped by ethical, legal, and political issues, and it's international in nature, or shaped by international and intercultural issues, and cross-cultural as well. So let's dig into each of those a little bit. So it's highly mobile, interactive, and adaptable. So when I was a tech writer, a lot of years ago, let's just say that, I developed we had these huge binders in our office, and those binders were, those binders were full of pages and pages of technical documentation. These were step-by-step instructions for our clients who were, this was a leasing finance software, so our clients were trying to do something. Okay, maybe it was a certain module they were adding. Maybe it had to do with the car leasing industry. It could have been a number of different things, but all of our technical communication was in these binders. Well, that's not how we do anything today. So technical communicators today, and many of you, probably none of you, plan to be technical communicators, but you will be communicating technical information or information of some sort. So this pertains to everybody who's watching this right now. But the way that technical communicators do it today is they have small chunks of information that are deployed in different ways. So you might write a small piece of communication, and then that communication is deployed into an FAQ, or that information is deployed then to, say a user manual that's dynamic, that is updated constantly, or to online help, where you might click on a word and get some response. But now we're looking at mobile devices, which is probably the most highly used form of communication these days. How often do we go to our computer? Not as often as we go to our mobile device. And so that information has to be interactive on a mobile device, and it has to be adaptable to different screen sizes, to Androids, to iPhones. It's incredible the way that our world has changed in just a few years, and our communication has to change with it. The reader-centered, audience-centered, everything is about audience. Never forget that. That's the cornerstone of everything that we do. the first thing to think about is and I'll get to this in a bit too, but we want to think about the needs and values of our audience. We want to think long and hard about who they really are and what they need. And that's something in a few slides I'm going to talk about more in depth. And chapter 2 centers on this concept. It's going to be something that I'm going to have you practice as well. I'm going to have you look at your client project and your client and the organization in which they work, and do some hard thinking about who they are and what they need. And I think that you can use that as a model when you move forward into whatever position that you want to in the future. Team oriented. There's almost nothing that you can do these days without being somewhat a part of a team. So when I was a technical communicator, I was part of a documentation team, but I was also part of a cross-functional team with customer service, or what they called customer service back then. It's not called that anymore. Marketing, our sales team. So whoever was responsible for the particular module that I was writing the manual for, everything is part of a team. And in almost any industry, any environment, from environmental science to criminology, to even museums and careers in museum work, everything has to do with being a positive team player and knowing how to work and write in that environment. We're going to talk about that more in the early chapters of this book, and I'm going to share more of my my experience, and I'm sure you've had a number of different team-based experiences as well. Technical communication is also highly, highly visual. So I always think of it in terms of the IKEA form of technical communication, where the more visuals that you can have, the better. Now, there are limits to that when we think about different cultures. The last item on this list, we have to have an awareness of cultural conventions and what those mean in visual form and what those mean for multimedia as well. But for the most part, we are drawn to visuals, and we can see. My mom used to always say that a picture was worth a thousand words, which is why she wouldn't let me watch her rationale for not allowing me to watch certain programs as a kid. We are highly visual. It's true. And our readers, our participants, our users, the end users that we sometimes call them in the technical communication world, they are also highly visual. And it's important for us to write and design with that in mind, and work on the communication side sometimes as much as the writing side. So what is the best way? What is the best medium for them to receive this information? Additionally, technical communication is shaped by those legal, ethical, and political dimensions. So material is, we don't think so much about plagiarism in technical communication, but we think about copyright. We think about trademarks. And we think about doctrines like fair use and guidelines that help us understand the legalities of libel and different political issues that probably should not be part of technical communication. And it's difficult, though, in some context to shy away from politics. When you think about the environment, there's a lot that coincides, intertwines with political issues. And so likewise, technical communication is shaped by all three of those ethical, legal, and political dimensions. And of course, everything in the world today is global. So there are intercultural, international, transatlantic, cross-cultural ramifications for everything that we write these days. It's important to understand how color translates into different cultures. It's important to think about different sayings, different, if you have a tagline for your company, how does that translate in different languages? Because sometimes those can be big mistakes. We will talk about this later, and I'll share some of those big mistakes. We'll talk about this later in the course, but it's important to remember that technical communication, as all communication is these days, global in nature. So what will we be looking at? Everything that we do in this class is genre-based, and a number of different genres we'll be looking at. Of course, we can't do them all, but to focus your attention, I'm going to look at memos. They're not used much anymore in technical environments, but they're still used every now and then, and understanding their conventions and how to write a strong one is important. So we're going to look at that. Many of you write lab reports in many of your different classes. In this particular class, we're going to be looking at a business proposal that you can model for future opportunities, and we'll look at status reports. We are going to design technical instructions, step-by-step instructions with visuals embedded within them, and then look at technical information that we can visualize or bring alive with visuals for our audience. And then finally, we're going to create a brochure in a client-based project as well. So the process for technical communication is of course like most writing, where you start with that research and planning. I would say more in technical communication, we spend more time researching and planning, and it's not always going to library databases and things like that, but it's thinking about everything that we can find on our subject matter. For me, that does mean often going to the library database, but it also means going to dig through the company information. It's digging through bills and laws sometimes, depending on what it is that you are researching. And this first stage is looking at the planning. Second stage moves into organizing and drafting that information. Third, improvising the style, looking to minimize that language for persuasive purposes. Fourth stage, designing, and fifth stage, revising and editing. We talked a lot about the first stage already, but I can't really say enough about the importance of planning. So often, I know when I was given, as a consultant in technical communication, when I was given a project, especially as a consultant, there's some pressure on you to perform, to have tangible results, and to kind of jump to that stage 2. But I can't emphasize enough what important research and planning can do for the project. That means knowing your reader, conducting a reader profile, a needs analysis, fully understanding who it is that you are writing for and the context in which you are writing without jumping ahead. It is critically important. Then, of course, when you get to the organizing and drafting stage, this is also, of course, drawing from the needs assessment, the reader profiles that you have and the planning, of course, that you've done with your team in stage one and that you continue to do all the way through the cycle. But in stage two, it also has to do with understanding the genre that you're creating. Sometimes I've gotten to stage two and realized I thought I was doing a white paper, but I'm actually doing a brochure, or vice versa, or none of these, no medium that I thought I was working on is actually the best way to get the information out to the audience in the way that they needed it. And so writing, organizing, drafting, beginning with your outline and thinking through, or I like clustering too, not everybody likes that. It's a form of brainstorming, but making sure that you do your storyboarding with your team, and follow the process that you've set up in stage one becomes really important, and continual communication with the team while you're drafting. Stage three is moves on to improving that style. In this class, we spend a great deal of time talking about active voice and minimalism and combining. I always say combine and conquer. If you've had me in past classes, I say that a lot, because you want to make your words as minimal and powerful as possible. And that really happens in that stage three of the process. And meanwhile, you might be designing in stage four, bringing in visuals or making that whole whatever it is you've written, you might be actually moving it into a visual arena or moving it to a website and doing your design there. Step 5, and all the way through, should be editing and revising. Okay, so I know the book has it as stage 5, but you should be thinking revision all the way through. You should be thinking audience and purpose and context all the way through the process. Waiting until the end to have members of a multifunctional team reviewing it is a bad idea. Make sure that's threaded all the way through the process. And that's why the arrows are there, but they really should be arrows pointing to every which way, because there are general stages, but it is a very, very iterative process. So I talked about it's all about audience, and it truly, truly is. We need to be always thinking about the needs, values, and attitudes of audience. And this is going to come back when you conduct your reader profile on your client in the coming week or two, week or so. Specifically, we think about needs in terms of who is this audience member? What is their level of education? What is their age? Who are they? What kinds of information do they need to make that decision or to take that action that we know is part of the definition for technical communication? What kinds of products or services do they need to solve a problem or get things done? In terms of values, what outcomes, standards, or ideals do your readers consider most important? Or maybe they have a governing body, like an FDA or a governmental body that has standards that they have to adhere to. What is the most important for them? And then, of course, what do they value above all else is important to keep in mind as well. Attitudes are always important. How do they feel about you, your company, your organization, the topic that you're writing about? And are they on board with what you're saying, or are they skeptical? This changes the way that you write, or it should change the way that you write. What I love about the way that Dr. Richard Sheehan, Johnson Sheehan, has shaped this last part of the book, or the last part of chapter 1, I should say, is how he focuses on technical communication as being part of the central nervous center, or being the center of what it is, whatever the organization is doing. Ideally, it should be. It's not always. I'll just tell you, in practice, it isn't always that way. But I love this focus that he has on entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial mindset and technical communication. So he talks about a number of different concepts that I want to just quickly go over because I think it's so important. First of all, he talks about the need to be an innovator. And I think I agree that to be successful in the workplace, you need to be on top of trends. You need to be reading. You need to be solution oriented and thinking about how to be a problem solver in different contexts. You need to understand products and services. You need to know what competitors are doing. You need to know what other like-minded organizations are doing so you can connect to each other. That connects well to being a leader. So that means thinking strategically, identifying outcomes. That means developing new ways of looking at things, setting goals, and knowing how to delegate things to others as well. And in today's technical workplace, leadership responsibilities, this is from the book directly, are often shared within teams, but individuals are needed to rise to the top and to be able to take those tasks and run with them. And so that always comes to play when we think about technical communication. And in fact, as I've watched the industry move, a lot of the pioneers in technical communication are now in very high leadership positions, which has been, they started as professors in technical communication. They rose to deans, and now many of them are in administrations and doing really important work. Others have moved more into the tech industries and have risen to the top. And we're seeing English majors who are CEOs of companies more and more, because that ability to communicate is so very important, and to be able to lead is equally as important. Something that we don't always do enough of is listening, right? And so being a good listener, hearing what your clients, what your audience has to say about a product or service is really important, and to ask those questions, those follow-up questions. I always do a lot of surveys. Polls are great for this too on social media. You can gather a lot of information very cheaply, and it can be very important to your organization. Network savvy, not always the strongest area for me, but just to be honest, but it is important to have technical know-how in today's society, to be able to understand how things work technically within your organization or within the industry in general is really important. The mobile aspect, I can't emphasize enough. Understanding how mobile technology works and how communication works and social media connects to that is highly important. Without that online audience, in a global world, we lose a lot. So understanding that and being savvy is very important. Also, being self-reliant, being someone that is a strong leader and can take the ball and run with it is truly very important. It means believing in yourself, sometimes even when others are hesitating, and trusting that you have the knowledge and skills and other characteristics that help the organization move forward. Extremely important. Ethical, the ethical part of the mindset, it is very complex, and we'll talk about this in a later chapter of the book, more in depth. But it's of course respecting and listening and hearing others and understanding how to treat people fairly and justly, and information fairly and justly as well. And if you behave in a way that is ethical, so there's a push today for organizations to exercise what's called corporate social responsibility. It's why you see some of the Fortune 500 companies get involved in community efforts. And it's because when you're part of a community, everything means more when we're sort of a part of an ecology together, right? So if we see each other together, we're going to invest in that organization, and we see that organization investing in us as well, and hearing us and listening to us and respecting us. Resilient, also a really important part of the mindset for technical communicators. Sometimes you have to be thick-skinned. Things happen, and you're going to receive a lot of criticism along the way. A lot of deadlines will come up. It's very stressful. Being able to operate under stress is very important. But moreover, it's being adaptable and flexible. Okay, so so few projects these days are, here's your project, do it, and in a week we'll move on to the next project. Unfortunately, some projects just never finish. Okay, so you don't even get to see the end result of the project because it's already in a 2.0, a 3.0, a 4.0 version. And so understanding that and being flexible and adaptable is truly important, because setbacks absolutely will happen. And it's important to be able to respond and act in a respectful, constructive way always. And of course, being a communicator, right? All of these characteristics, innovators, leaders, all of them involve being a strong communicator in both, I would say actually all three forms: written, oral, and visual communicator. Understanding how the rhetorical background of communication and how persuasion works, those are central to being a powerful technical communicator. And that ability to be able to communicate clearly, confidently, and persuasively plays an important role in your future and that of your future organization, wherever you plan to work in the future. All right. So with that, I'm going to end the video here. This is a little bit about chapter 1. Come out of my share here. That was a little bit about chapter 1. I wanted to touch on some of the high points, but overall, I wanted you to understand technical communication as being the process in which we look at making information, technical or not, actionable. and the importance of persuasion, the importance of mindset, and also the importance of process, the different stages of the process. Thank you. Hope you guys are having a great day or night, and I'll see you soon for chapter 2.